I am Colonel Sarah Vance of the United States Army. Most people see the silver eagles on my shoulders and assume I am made of stone. They call me Ironhide behind my back. It is a nickname I earned during 3 tours in the sandbox and a decade of commanding logistics brigades. I move supplies. I move people. And I move mountains, if the mission requires it. But to the people sitting in this overly expensive wedding venue, I am just the disappointment. I am the older sister who never learned to be soft. I am the woman who chose combat boots over heels and duty over domesticity. My younger sister, Chloe, was the golden child. She was everything my parents wanted. She was petite, smiling, and adept at saying exactly what people wanted to hear. Today was her wedding day. She was marrying Captain James Miller. Miller was a good man and a damn fine logistics officer under my direct command. That made this situation complicated. My family did not know that in my world, I was not just Sarah. I was the brigade commander. I held the authority to crush careers or save them. They only saw me as the spinster aunt who needed to sit in the back and keep her mouth shut. I arrived at the venue 10 minutes late on purpose. I wore my Army service uniform, the dress blues. I did not wear a gown. My invitation had a passive-aggressive note at the bottom that said, "Civilians only." I ignored it. I am a soldier 24 hours a day. The venue was a sprawling estate in Virginia, dripping with white roses and old money pretension. I walked across the manicured lawn. My heels clicked a steady rhythm on the stone path. Heads turned. I saw the whispers start immediately. Guests in pastel dresses and linen suits looked at my uniform like I was an alien species. I saw my mother near the entrance. Her face fell when she saw me. She rushed over, her smile tight and fake. She grabbed my arm with a grip that was surprisingly strong. She hissed that I was making a scene. She asked why I could not just wear a dress like a normal person for one day. I removed her hand from my arm gently but firmly. I told her I was paying my respects to a subordinate officer. She rolled her eyes. She told me to go find my seat in the back corner. I walked past her. I felt the weight of my service ribbons on my chest. Each one represented a story, a sacrifice, or a friend who did not come home. These people saw colorful decorations. I saw blood and dirt. I needed a moment to compose myself before the ceremony began. I ducked into the ladies' room near the reception hall. It was empty, or so I thought. I walked into the last stall and locked the door. A moment later, the main door opened. 2 women walked in. I recognized the voices immediately. It was Chloe and her maid of honor, Jessica. They were laughing. It was a cruel, sharp sound. Chloe was fixing her makeup. I could hear the rustle of her massive silk dress. Jessica asked if Chloe was nervous about Miller deploying next week. Miller was scheduled for a 9-month rotation to a forward operating base. It was a hazardous area. We had briefed on the risk assessment just 2 days ago. Chloe laughed again. She said she was not nervous at all. She said the timing was perfect. She said she would have the house to herself and the basic allowance for housing, would cover the mortgage with cash to spare. My stomach tightened. This was typical Chloe behavior. But then she said something that made my blood run cold. She lowered her voice, but in the tiled room, it echoed clearly. She told Jessica to do the math. She said Miller had maxed out his SGLI. That is, the service members' group life insurance. Every soldier carries it. It pays out $400,000 if the soldier dies. Chloe mentioned the additional death gratuity of $100,000. She added the dependency and indemnity compensation on top of that. I stood frozen in the stall. My hand hovered over the latch. Chloe was listing the benefits like she was reading a menu. She said Miller was worth more to her in a box than he was in a bed. She actually said those words. She said she was crossing her fingers for an IED or a training accident. She joked that a widow looks great in black. Jessica giggled and told her she was bad. Chloe said she was just being practical. She said she had plans for that $500,000. She wanted a beach house. She wanted a new car. She said Miller was boring anyway. She called him a Boy Scout. She said once he was gone, she would be the grieving widow with a fat bank account and full TRICARE benefits for life. She called herself a genius. I felt a rage so pure it almost blinded me. This was not just greed. This was predation. She was hunting my soldier. In the army, we look out for our own. We have a warrior ethos. I will never leave a fallen comrade, and I sure as hell will not let a comrade walk into a trap set by my own sister. I took my phone out. I stopped the recording app I had instinctively turned on when they started talking money. They left the bathroom in a cloud of expensive perfume. I stayed for another minute. I needed to think. I needed a plan. I could not just storm out and scream. No one would believe the jealous older sister. I needed to destroy this tactically. I needed to use the weapons I had. I am a commander. I know regulations. I know forms. And I know how to strike when the enemy is exposed. I left the bathroom and made a phone call. It was to my battalion S1, the adjutant in charge of personnel. It was a Sunday, but he answered on the first ring. I gave him a direct order. I told him to access Captain Miller's file immediately. I told him what I needed. He hesitated for a second, surprised by the request. I repeated the order. He said he was on it. I walked to the ceremony area. I sat in the back row as instructed. I watched Miller stand at the altar. He looked handsome in his dress blues. He looked nervous and happy. He looked at Chloe like she was the sun and the moon. He had no idea she was calculating his death benefits while she walked down the aisle. The ceremony was a blur. I barely heard the vows. I was plotting. I watched Chloe fake her tears. I watched my parents beam with pride. They thought they had won. They thought they had secured a successful, stable future for their princess. They did not know I was holding a grenade. The reception was under a massive white tent. The champagne flowed. The speeches began. The best man told embarrassing stories. The maid of honor cried about sisterhood. Then it was Chloe's turn. She stood up with a microphone. She looked radiant and dangerous. She thanked everyone for coming. She thanked her parents. Then her eyes found me in the back. A wicked smile played on her lips. She said she wanted to give a special shout-out to her big sister, Sarah. She said it was so brave of me to come alone. She said she knew how hard it was for me to find a date since I was married to the job. The crowd laughed. It was a polite, uncomfortable laughter. Chloe continued. She said she hoped I did not mind that Miller was the handsome one in the family now. She said maybe I could learn a thing or two from Miller about how to be a soldier who is also a human being. She mocked my rank. She said having eagles on my shoulder did not keep me warm at night. She said she was going to be a real army wife now. She said she would handle the home front while the boys played war. My mother laughed and clapped. My father nodded. They loved seeing me taken down a peg. I sat there and sipped my water. I waited. I watched Miller. He was not laughing. He was looking at his new wife with a confused expression. He looked at me. He saw the look in my eyes. He had seen that look before in the briefing room. It was the look that meant a mission was about to change. Miller stood up. He interrupted Chloe. He took the microphone from her hand gently. The room went silent. He looked at me across the tables. He straightened his back. He snapped his heels together. The sound was sharp and loud. He raised his hand in a perfect salute. It was a slow, deliberate salute. It was the kind of salute you give to a superior officer who has just saved your life. The guests gasped. Chloe looked confused. She tried to grab the microphone back. Miller held up a hand to stop her. He said clearly, "Ma'am, permission to speak freely." I stood up. I returned his salute. I said, "Permission granted, Captain." Miller turned to the crowd. He said he had an announcement to make. He said he had received a text message from his brigade commander 10 minutes ago. He said that the message contained an audio file. He said he had listened to it with his earpiece during the maid of honor's speech. Chloe went pale. She knew. She tried to laugh it off. She said Miller was being silly. She told him to sit down. Miller ignored her. He looked at her with eyes that were no longer full of love. They were full of the cold steel of a soldier who realizes he has been betrayed. Miller spoke to the room. He said he wanted to clarify some financial details for his new wife. He said he knew how much she cared about the logistics of his service. He said he wanted to ensure everyone knew the current status of his benefits. I walked forward. I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. My S1 had emailed it to me, and I had printed it in the hotel business center before coming to the reception. I handed it to Miller. Miller held up the paper. He told the crowd this was from SGLV 8286. He explained that this is the form a soldier uses to designate beneficiaries for their life insurance. He said that normally the spouse gets the money automatically. The crowd was dead silent. You could hear the wind rustling the tent flaps. Miller looked at Chloe. He said that as of 20 minutes ago, his electronic record had been updated. He said the beneficiary was no longer his spouse. He said 50% would go to his mother. The other 50% would go to the Wounded Warrior Project. He asked Chloe if she had heard that correctly. $0 for the widow. Chloe dropped her glass. It shattered on the dance floor. She started to stammer. She said he could not do that. She said it was illegal. She screamed that she was his wife. I stepped up to the microphone. My voice was calm. It was the voice I used to command 3,000 soldiers. I told her it was perfectly legal. I told her the soldier has the absolute right to designate their beneficiary. I told her that under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, we value integrity above all else. I turned to the guests. I told them what I had heard in the bathroom. I did not use the recording. I did not need to. I quoted her exact words. I repeated the part about him being worth more in a box. I repeated the part about the beach house. The room erupted. My mother looked like she was going to faint. My father looked at Chloe with horror. The groom's family stood up, their faces red with anger. Chloe started crying. She screamed that I was a liar. She said I was jealous. She said I was trying to ruin her life because I was a lonely, bitter old woman. Miller looked at her. He said he believed his commander. He said he had seen the way she looked at the bank statements. He said he had ignored the red flags because he loved her. He said he was a fool, but he was not a dead fool yet. Then I delivered the final blow. I looked at Chloe and told her there was one more thing. I told her that as the brigade commander, I had the authority to manage the deployment roster. I told her that Captain Miller was no longer deploying to the combat zone next week. I told her I had flagged him for a compassionate reassignment pending a legal review of his domestic situation. I explained what that meant. I said there would be no combat pay. There would be no family separation allowance. There would be no tax-free status. I said Captain Miller would be staying right here in Virginia, working a desk job on base pay. I asked her if she still loved him as much without the danger money. Chloe stared at me. Her mask completely crumbled. She screamed that I had no right. She yelled that she needed that money. She exposed herself completely in front of 200 witnesses. She proved every word I said was true. Miller took off his wedding ring. He placed it on the table next to the wedding cake. He looked at Chloe and told her to get a lawyer. He said he would be filing for an annulment based on fraud. He said the marriage was over before the ink was dry on the license. Miller turned to me. He saluted again. I ordered him to fall out. He grabbed his cover, his hat, and walked away from the head table. He did not look back. I looked at my parents. They were silent. They could not defend her. The evidence was too loud. I told them I was leaving. I told them that if they wanted to visit a real member of the family, they could come to the base. but I doubted they would clear the security check. I walked out of the tent. I heard the chaos erupt behind me. I heard Chloe screaming at Miller to come back. I heard his mother shouting at my mother. It was a disaster, but it was a necessary disaster. I found Miller in the parking lot. He was leaning against his car. He looked broken, but he was standing tall. He saw me approaching. He wiped a hand across his eyes. He said he was sorry. He apologized for bringing dishonor to the unit. I shook my head. I told him there was no dishonor in being targeted. I told him the only dishonor would have been staying in the kill zone once he knew the truth. I told him he was a good officer. I told him we would fix this. We have legal assistance officers. We have support systems. We take care of our own. He asked me if I really canceled his deployment. I smiled. It was a rare thing for me. I told him I had pulled some strings. I told him I needed a good logistics officer to reorganize the warehouse stateside. It was a lie. Mostly. I could send him anywhere, but he needed time to heal. He needed to be away from her, but close enough to handle the divorce. We got into our separate cars. I drove away from the plantation. I drove back toward the base. The sun was setting over the Virginia hills. It was beautiful. I thought about the concept of family. Blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family. Chloe wanted the benefits of a soldier without the sacrifice. She wanted the title of a wife without the commitment. She learned a hard lesson that day. She learned that the military is a brotherhood and a sisterhood. You do not mess with one of us without taking on all of us. I am Colonel Sarah Vance. I sleep well at night. I do not have a husband, and I do not have a beach house. But I have my integrity, and I have soldiers who will walk through fire for me, because they know I will do the same for them. That is worth more than any insurance payout. The next day at the base, the story had already spread. The gossip mill in the Army is faster than fiber optics. When I walked into the headquarters, the sentries at the gate saluted a little sharper. My staff stood a little straighter. They knew what had happened. They knew I had protected one of their own. I called Miller into my office. He looked tired. He had not slept. I told him to take a few days of leave. I told him to get his affairs in order. I handed him a card for a civilian lawyer who specialized in military divorce cases. I told him this lawyer was a shark. I told him Chloe would be lucky if she walked away with the dress she was wearing. Miller took the card. He thanked me. He asked me why I did it. He asked why I blew up my own sister's wedding. I looked at the flag standing in the corner of my office. I looked at the picture of my graduating class from West Point on the wall. I told him the truth. I told him that I did not blow up the wedding. I disarmed a bomb. I told him that my duty is to the welfare of my troops. That duty does not end at the main gate. It follows them home. He nodded. He understood. He turned to leave. At the door, he stopped. He said, "Thank you, Colonel, for having my six." "I always have your six, Captain," I said. He walked out. I turned back to my desk. I had reports to file. I had logistics to manage. I had a brigade to run. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. It was a long paragraph about how I was selfish and cruel. She said I had embarrassed the family. She said she did not want to speak to me for a long time. I did not reply. I deleted the message. I did not feel sad. I felt light. I had cut away the dead weight. I had neutralized the threat. I picked up my pen. The Army keeps moving, and so do I. The lesson here is simple. Do not mistake silence for weakness. Do not mistake a uniform for a costume. And never, ever try to profit from the death of a soldier while his commander is in the room. You might find yourself outranked, outgunned, and out of luck. If you enjoyed this story of military justice, make sure to like and subscribe. And remember, the real heroes are the ones who serve for the right reasons, not for the payout. Dismissed.